Beautiful, beautiful. So I've always had an attraction to language, right, to words, and how to use them as both a tool for communication, but also as a vehicle for culture, right? And one of the things that attracted me most in language was poetry and spoken word and performance art, in the way that it really cultivates a space for active listening, right? It creates a space for you to be heard. So let me take you a little bit through the culture of spoken word, right? So one of the things that we like to say is that poetry, it is not like golf. So like, you don't have to wait till the poem is over and then go, good volley, good volley. No. You don't have to do that, right? It's an interactive thing, right? There's a constant energy exchange that is happening, right? So if you hear something that you like, you snap your fingers. Can everybody snap their fingers? Beautiful. Y'all sound like sexy rain. That's wonderful, right? You can clap your hands. We are in a sanctuary, so if the Spirit so moves you, you can yell hallelujah. You can kick your feet, but don't kick your neighbor. Or you can make the chocolate stuck at the roof of your mouth noise that kind of sounds like mmm. So on the count of three, can we get a collective mmm? 1, 2, 3? Wonderful. Y'all are beautiful, right? So there is that constant exchange, right? There is that thing of like the active listening that people are responding to you, right? That all of the energy that is going out into the audience is coming right back to you onto the stage and is fueling you, right? And so me going into poetry was not really something liked by my mother. So coming from where I'm from, I'm originally born in Cameroon, Central Africa, right? And so having a very traditional, very strict African mother, telling her that I'm dropping out of medical school to pursue creative writing and teaching and to do spoken word and poetry and art full time was not a thing for her. She pretty much disowned me. We didn't speak for almost 2 years. Right? For her, it was always a thing that, but how is poetry a profession? What can it do for you? How would it help you reach the sky? And I knew that a lot of that was her thinking about herself and all of the struggles and the things that she had to go through, right, to be successful. Because I know that ma mère, elle n'a jamais eu des ailes. My mama, she ain't never had no wings, but she could tap dance on hurricanes and played poker with death. She couldn't teach me how to be a good man, but she taught me how to be a good human being, how to stand up straight, walk tall, face forward, be proud of who you are, because ain't much God left in this world, but treat the world like there is still plenty God left in you. My mama, she ain't never had no wings, but she's always fought to soar in any atmosphere. You would think that she was Shiva, the way that she would juggle her 6 kids, 2 jobs, a home, the glory of her crown, the abusive scars of her ex-husband without ever skipping a beat. But strong women have a supernatural way of doing these things. She said that the secret to her strength was giving her jigsaw puzzle of her heart to God, the only being that's ever taken the time in appreciating all of her pieces. Ma mère, elle n'a jamais eu des ailes. My mama, she ain't never had no wings. But she's always had this global warming of a smile, told me to only love a woman who could melt the polar ice caps of your past. She sat me down one day, y'all, and said, now you better treat a woman like you would treat me, because if you don't, I'll be on the next plane to slap you back into this country. You, a Cameroonian man, we do not do those kinds of things. And then she continues. Beware of the tempting ballad of jazzy bells with tuba lifts, trombone legs, and a bass line that could turn any man into a crooked song. And make sure to not sleep with no one else's bones but your own. My mama, she ain't never had no wings. She said, if you try too hard to reach for the sun, you will only end up in flames. Do not be a handsome shadow of Icarus, son. Learn how to stay grounded, son. Teach trees about their roots and never give the world your tears, only smiles, gift wrapped in forgiveness, because mama said, y'all. Mama said that a hater is just a person with their heart all jumbled up because their self-worth and confidence is drowning in a sea of simulation that makes the oceans in their chest nothing but puddles of insecurities, because those who show you no love are usually the ones who need to see it the most. Ma mère, elle n'a jamais eu des ailes. My mama, she ain't never had wings, y'all. But man, if she could still fly, she could care less about gravity. When she can bend space and time between her fingertips, she wears the fabric of the universe like her second skin, her first being her will to always survive, right? And so like my mama, shout out to moms. So shout out to moms. She's absolutely incredible, and she finally did come around. When she saw that I was being successful, now I've become the director of poetry events for Busboys and Poets, and I run other youth programmings and touring and all this kind of stuff. She sees I'm able to take care of myself and my family. But it gets a little weird because now, she tries to either be my manager or, she tries to, she pretty much, fangirls me. So, she will... she will call me from wherever she is, oftentimes overseas, and she'd be like, hello, my son, how are you? When is your next poem going to be on the YouTube? I need to show everybody how fantastic my son is. Because of me, he got into poetry and he's successful. And I'm like, come on, Ma, come on, right? But I know a lot of her fears, right, came out of all of the pain and trauma and struggle that she went through, right, and wanting to be successful so that all of her children can also be successful, right? And this is the thing that I try to pass on to my own relationship with my own son, right? So I have a son. He's super fantastic. He's 9 years old. He actually turned 9 years old today. So he told me to make sure I tell everybody to get him gifts. And if I lie about it, he's going to see the video later on YouTube, and I'm not going to be able to get it back in the house. So please send him gifts, right? So, but he's absolutely fantastic. And he was such a catalyst in my healing, alongside with poetry. And that's one of the things I always tell my students and people I do with workshops, that poetry can offer you such a space to create your own healing, right? And I remember specifically a conversation that I had with my son when he asked me, wait, what did you want to be when you grew up, and da-da-da-da. And I was immediately shifted to a time in middle school when my English teacher at the time would ask me this very same daring question, right? And so, she's going around asking, what does everybody want to be? I want to be a physician, a firefighter, a policeman, da-da-da-da. So they finally get to me, and I'm like, I want to grow up to become a cigarette. So people are looking at me like, all right, y'all, it's the foreign kid. He doesn't really speak English. Just let it go, guys. Just let it go, right? And I'm like, no, I want to grow up to become a cigarette because it is the only thing that my father could never abandon. And for as long as I could remember, I had always felt like a man constantly in reverse, like the backwash of a dream, like karma's favorite crash test dummy, constantly begging someone for all the love that they'd already given me. So I had started drinking and being with women in order to fill up all of the potholes inside of my spirit. But drinking more absolute only made me more obsolete, as I treated having the bodies of people like mirrors to try and convince myself that I could be beautiful in the pleasures that I gave them. But when I was 13, that's when I first started building train tracks on my stomach, some on thighs and arms, to all the parts of me that I wish I could forget. But now all I'm left with is this vulgar smile, stitched to a sense of humor that often hides the boy with the skin of a scarecrow, because it's the only way that his corny heart can ward off all of the birds and the bees. The only thing that my father ever passed me is this uncanny ability to hurt the people that we love the most. In a split second, I lost a woman that I thought I loved more than my third-degree scars. The very next year, at a random doctor's visit, I found out that I was alcohol intolerant, that I've drunk so much over the years that liquor has become poisonous to my blood, so my very next shot could have well been my last. God, he has a funny sense of humor. He took away the two things that I harbored on the most to teach me of real love, and that women and liquor are not a cure to your loneliness. So what do you want to be when you grow up? I answered, I want to become a pediatrician. One that helps save and heal children, starting with the one within myself. But who would have known in the 15 years it took to write this poem that I would grow up to become a pediatrician, making a stethoscope out of a microphone, writing poems out like daily prescriptions, and turning the stage into a patient room for the healing of me to start within. Because when you are on the search for the divine inside of yourself, you're often led to the harsh realization that you've been more Rick James than First James, with built-in fire escapes inside of your bones. For all the times that you wanted to run away from the blaze inside of yourself. But what kind of legacy would I pass on to my son? Will I give him a legacy of just another black boy with hands like ashtrays, for him to inherit the butts of his father's mistakes? See, I used to want to grow up to become a cigarette. Made sense because I'm a Cancer, but there's no chemotherapy to my astronomy. Yet I still radiate like a sun that is afraid to shine, but always willing to give all of his light to save anybody's sunset, which is all but the excruciating reality that I do not want to die alone. But I turn to my son and tell him, you can grow up to be anything that you want. Just make sure to never end up anything but just a small escape inside of a slow-burning pulse, kind of like a cigarette. So, shout out to my son. Absolutely brilliant human being, absolutely brilliant, and it's a lot of that I carry with me, and that catharsis that poetry can offer you, right? And that I tell a lot of my students that yes, poetry can be therapeutic, but it is not therapy. It just offers you that platform where you feel like you have this safe space where you can actually go through your feelings. And a lot of that is being scared, right? A lot of us are afraid to even write about a lot of those demons and that hurt and that pain and that trauma and that struggle. But poetry offered me the language for me to write about it and then to overcome it as well, right? And there are a lot of people that don't do that, right? There are a lot of people like, I'm not going to come up here and tell all of my secrets. How would people perceive me and judge me and look at me? But I always tell my students, like, you have to write your honest truth, right? Because if you don't write your truth, then someone else will. If you don't tell your story, someone else will, and they probably won't do it the justice that it deserves. Then they're like, but what about writer's block? And I tell them writer's block doesn't exist, right? A good friend of mine always told me that, writer's block is not about the absence of imagination and inspiration, but it is a surplus of judgment, right? It is you telling yourself that what you're writing isn't good enough. But how can your story not be good enough, right? Because you start writing from here, then you edit here, right? You start here with what you feel and what is so true to you, and then you edit it out. And so now, as of late, I've been on this journey of writing a lot about home and being honest about the things about home that I experienced. Because for a long time, I always thought, well, why would people care about my stories from Cameroon, right? These things that most people would not even be able to relate to. But I truly had to unlearn that, right? And getting back to that intersectionality of language as a tool for communication and a vehicle for culture, right? But then thinking a lot about these stories that I want to write and the people I want to write it to and for are people who will probably never get to hear or really understand this because I'm writing it in a language that is not their own, right? English is only my fourth language, right? But I had to come to this point, right? I had to come to this point where if I want to tell these stories, I have to be honest about it. So I went back to the source. One of the things that always offered me the greatest imagination, whether it was back home or here, were cartoons. I used to watch cartoons all the time. To me, cartoons were my vehicle for culture, right? Watching shows like Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Laboratory, or even the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, right? And how they were some of the best English teachers a Francophone immigrant like me could ever have. Their curriculum was riddled in laughter, impossible exploits, and the daunting task of saving the world from the aliens. My accent was a Saturday morning cartoon. It often riddled others with laughter. Coiling into a language not its own was an impossible exploit. Still, I was trying to transform into something powerful enough to save everyone else from the alien. And the shame that came from being made to feel so different, that my accent, my culture, my breath was too unreal and did not deserve to be so animated. Adina beba, l'anglais lingana titi. On est n'amwenda di pabol, pas l'anglais. L'anglais n'est que ma quatrième langue. English is but my fourth language. It is the baby of the family, the one my mouth spoils, favored by default, who may one day be sold off by its siblings in hopes to never return because all of my other tongues have grown so jealous. In my country, we have over 200 dialects. That's over 200 ways to say love, to say family, to say I belong to something that does not want to kill me, that does not want to siphon the gold from my flesh or the stories from my bones. See, I was a house once, full of stories. One for this American dream, another for all of the miles of ocean and all of the gospel still walking in its murky bottom. The last is me, still trying to translate the catacomb accents of my parents' tongues when they would say, you have become so American now. What they would mean is, deport all of that tribe from your mouth. You talk like them now. You walk like them now. No more of that Yaoundé stuck in my teeth. Now everything tastes like the steps to unbirthing a country, which is to say, America sometimes has a way of killing everything that it comes from. How a passport can feel like a smooth step, damn sentence, and now I had to learn how to fold myself into a flag, stitch myself a newly striped name, a new set of stars. I passed through customs, but my tongue had to stay behind, which is to say, I remember when I was too black for Africans and too African for blacks, but all a meaningless story in America. My name was thick in chemically enhanced amendments. My name was wishing for a white picket flesh while living with Section 8 bones, which is to say that you can be a house, but sometimes this country has a way of reminding you that you are not a home, that you're only the debris, the aftermath, the constant reconstruction. But oh, America, I mean, show us your papers. I mean, who documented your dream? I mean, can the attack dogs still smell the unalienable right from my brittle and marginalized skin? Because I know that sometimes the bullet which not care which side of the ocean I am from, it will swim through my body all of the same. It will try to make a home of me until my name is but an exit wound blushing in so much cruel history. But I know that my tongue is still patiently awaiting my return. But I wonder if sometimes I would still feel like a stranger in my own house, which is to say that in this journey, even as proud as I am of it all, I always hope to remain a language worth coming home to. Thank you.